Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Please let me introduce the National Golf Course Owners Association CEO, Jay Karen.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I see we have a small, but I'm sure very enthusiastic crowd this morning. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so first let me introduce the Golf USA Tee Time Coalition for folks in the audience that aren't familiar with this group. It's a 501c6 trade organization founded about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, by the NGCOA and the PGA of America. And we have 3 board members from the NGCOA, 3 from the PGA of America, and we have 1 from the hotel industry to work on these matters. So, with that being said, a Bill of Rights. So who knew that on a Thursday morning you're going to get a civics lesson here, but in actuality the American Bill of Rights, while created in a very different context, is a pretty decent analogy for these new operators' Bill of Rights. The purpose of the first 10 amendments to the US Constitution was to put into writing very specific limitations of the federal government and specific natural rights of citizens, which the Constitution did not spell out. So why a Bill of Rights in golf? In 2015, the NGCOA published a set of what we called guidelines for software companies and tee time providers, which detailed practices that we believed were appropriate for the tee time marketplace. There was in this document a mix of standards, suggestions, best practices. It's been a good reference for discussing what is and what isn't healthy, good, fair, or ethical. We put on paper those things that were important to golf course operators, but we feel that we need to update our approach to these documents and standards. So with regard to behavior, activity, practices, etc., it is the intent of the coalition to have 3 resources. Number 1, these Bill of Rights, which provide clarity around what we believe are natural rights of golf course operators when partnering with companies that have access to your inventory. 2, technical standards and contractual standards for software companies and tee time providers. This will be more detailed instruction, a checklist of the things that they must follow in this ecosystem. And then third is education, the best practices, because there are what we believe are the software and tee time companies doing what we want them to do, and then there's the best practices. What should you be doing with these tools to advantage your facilities? How did you negotiate these terms? How did you get the data that you need to evaluate these relationships? So with regard to the Bill of Rights, why do we need these? We need them simply because the relationship between golf courses and tee time marketing companies, probably more so than the software companies, are complicated. These vendor relationships are not like buying golf cars, they're not like buying turf equipment, not like insurance, because you as golf course operators give these companies access to your inventory. You invite them into your home. It's a very different relationship. And if you have companies staying in your homes, usually they're going to be ground rules. So what we are saying here is, if you're going to work with us, the golf course operators, you need to respect and abide by these natural rights that we, the golf course operators, have. And if you do, we can live happily together. So without further ado, let's look at our Bill of Rights. Number 1, the operator shall have total ownership of his or her tee time inventory, including the ability to share access with or restrict access to any tee time agency. This means, as a course operator, you get to say who gets and doesn't get access to your inventory. If a company you're doing business with is forward distributing your tee times to other companies, other websites, you should have the right to say, I don't want my tee times here, I only want some of my tee times over there, etc. In addition, and this is a tougher one, if you're giving access to your inventory to a software company, which you generally have to do if you're going to sell tee times, and that company does not distribute certain tee time to certain tee time sites, but you want your data shared, we believe there should be a way for you to share such data. You see, many of these software to tee time company relationships involve financial arrangements between the software company and the tee time marketer with your inventory. In other words, those financial arrangements can open or close access to your inventory. And remember, these are your tee times, and you should have the ability to move it around where you want. Right now, that is not easy to do, and in some cases impossible, because some of these software companies don't share your tee times with anyone. But we believe it's a fundamental right in this day and age of open marketplace, and the ability to share data is not like what it used to be. 2, the operator shall have full control of all pricing for all tee time inventory across all channels of distribution and online tee time agencies, which includes retaining the right to the lowest price guarantee on his or her website. Again, this is your inventory, your business, your income, your brand. What your tee times sell for should be at your full discretion, and no one should have the ability to sell your tee times for a lower price than what you want to offer on your website. Now, many people are abdicating this right when they enter into barter agreements that allow your tee time marketer to set prices for your golf, your brand, but that is your choice. I, for one, believe abdicating price to those who do not have your cost of running your business is one of the deepest problems we have in this entire ecosystem. Nevertheless, your right is to control all pricing in all channels. 3, the operator's tee time availability and pricing shall be accurately displayed and free from misrepresentation or inappropriate display bias. What this means: sometimes we find that the tee time companies are misrepresenting a golf course by displaying incorrect information, such as if they even have inventory with them, or using marketing lines such as 80% off Augusta Ranch when in fact there is no such deal. Sometimes the purpose of this is to bait the golfer into their website to redirect them to courses that do have inventory on their site. This is problematic for a number of reasons, and we believe a basic right is to be accurate and truthful about your business. Number 4, the operator shall receive comprehensive and transparent data related to all performance and activity with all distribution partners, agencies, and affiliates, including but not limited to customer name, email address, tee time reservation data, revenue, price paid for tee times, impressions, and clicks. Your inventory, your customer, period. Anyone selling your tee time should freely share the customer data, and you shouldn't have to pay more or barter more for that information. Since money and data are changing hands between you and your partners, you should also have access to relevant data so you can judge the effectiveness, the behavior, and the value of these relationships. 5, the operator shall have the option to pay cash for all technology and marketing services. Bottom line here: there are and will be creative payment options for these services, everything from bartering tee times to paying for these services through your merchant processing fees. Because of this, the value for services can get pretty opaque. Wait, what did I pay for this software? What am I paying for this tee time distribution? Nothing? How will we know that A plus B equals C in these relationships if you don't even know what the price of A is, right? So in all cases, we believe operators should have the option to pay clearly for services, and nothing is as clear as an invoice. Number 6, operator shall retain all rights associated with his or her business brand, name, and likeness, which shall not be used in marketing by any agent or affiliate without the operator's written permission. Now, in order to get clicks and bookings, tee time agencies, this happens in the hotel world every day, tee time agencies in golf, they have to battle it out in the search engines. In doing so, they often use your golf course's brand to attract the golfers to their websites, sometimes with your permission, sometimes without. We think if they do this, if your golf course is mentioned in any of their marketing efforts, it should be with your explicit permission, period. Permission is not implied because you give them tee times. Number 7, the operator shall have the right to cancel any agreement with any tee time agency or affiliate without being subject to excessive fees, penalties, or evergreen terms. If you want to get out, you should not be handcuffed to any unreasonable terms. And if you're not paying attention to your contract, which a lot of operators do, you sign contracts, you go along, you move along in your business, and you forget what the terms are, you should not be held to auto renewals that last an unreasonable amount of time. Meaning, some contracts say if you don't cancel within this specific window of time, you are automatically renewed for an entire year. We think that kind of language and those terms are not meant to help protect you, the golf course operator. Number 8, the operator shall have the right to enforce their own policies and procedures, including but not limited to cancellation or no-show policies when such policies are in conflict with partnered or affiliated tee time agencies. Aggregators, the Golf Nows, Tee Offs, and so forth, they like to try to standardize policies and practices for obvious reasons. You're dealing with thousands of businesses, you want to standardize as much as you can. But when dealing with thousands of independent businesses, you're simply going to run into situations where they don't align. Do your no-show, cancellation, and rain check policies match that of the company selling your tee times? Do your own policies come through in the booking process? If there is conflict, your policies, as the service provider, should win the day. Considering that your tee times could show up on 30 websites, your policies have to be the winner. So there you have it, folks. The Coalition Board is expected to formally adopt this at this afternoon's board meeting, but please remember that we all want healthy relationships, symbiotic ones, but we also have to remember that we, this coalition, are representing you, the golf operator, in this marketplace. As always, we welcome you to reach out to the Coalition office or any of the board members, and you can find us at teatimecoalition.org. And with that, we're 2 minutes ahead, so I can take 2 minutes of any questions. This was not scripted, but I'm happy to. Okay, no questions? All right, then let's move along the agenda so we can save more Q&A for the panel. So Arnaud Zunz is with PriceSwing. We had Arnaud speak at our technology conference this past fall, and it was a big hit. So dynamic pricing has been used for years in the hotel and airline industries, but it remains widely underutilized and often misunderstood in the golf business. In this session, he will walk through with you, step by step, the way to utilize dynamic pricing and digital marketing to fill your tee sheet. The program will explore the fundamentals of building a dynamic pricing strategy and showcase how to effectively manage it on a daily basis. This is the education part of that three-legged stool that we want to provide the marketplace. So Arnaud, welcome to the stage.
Thanks, Jay. Oops. Hello, everybody. So let's talk about dynamic pricing, which is quite new in the golf industry, but it's really interesting to talk about that right now. First of all, what is dynamic pricing? It's many words. You have heard about dynamic pricing since a long time, about yield management, revenue management, search pricing, etc., etc. But behind those complex words, what is it exactly? It's quite simple, in fact. It's selling the right product to the right customer at the right time, through the right price, via the right channel. Quite simple definition, but complex to apply. One thing that must be known about dynamic pricing is that it's not new at all. It has been created in the 70s by the airlines industry, by American Airlines, and then in the 80s and 90s in the hotel industry. But what has changed right now, it has since few years, you have the increase of big data, machine learning, so new technology, cloud. And so now, dynamic pricing is everywhere, in all industry, in taxi, in restaurant, in the entertainment, like here in Orlando with Disney World. So it's everywhere. So the question today is, why not in golf? The good news is that in our industry, we have done variable pricing since decades. Everybody knows about weekend, sunset, high-low season, different pricing according resident, senior, etc. So it is the first step of dynamic pricing. So golf managers are doing dynamic pricing since a long time. But the difference right now is that you can change the price more often. Why? Because in the golf industry, it's really a great playground for dynamic pricing, because you have so many parameters that impact demands. You have the weather, but behind the weather, you have the temperature, the sunshine, etc., etc. You have the ground condition, you have the competition, you have the events, you have the sunset, etc., etc. Many external conditions. So quite simple to understand. But what you think about that, it's quite complex, because you have clients, you have customers, and those customers are different. You have resident, some golf courses have daily players, the other one have tourist players, and even inside those categories, your clients are different. There are some who are time sensitive, they want to play each Saturday at 10, and others are price sensitive. They don't fear about moving time of playing if the price is different. So what you have to do in the golf industry, in fact, is to have a personalized pricing. It's to adapt your price to your clients, not only to the external conditions. And there is a new way also, and Jay talked about that. You can book through different channels today. Before it was just at the desk by phone. Now it's through your website, it's through the website of the golf course, and it's also through third-party assets. So through those different channels, you need also to have a channel pricing strategy. So in fact, it's quite complex in our industry, in the golf industry, to apply dynamic pricing yield management. But for that, you have many data. And data is the big difference today. Your data is a gold mine. First of all, each golf manager should know, my advice, his occupancy rate. It's quite simple, but it's the basis of dynamic pricing. It's really the basis. And like every hotel manager, you need to know your occupancy rate by day, by hour, etc., etc. Because your objective is to have 100 occupancy rate. So for that, you need to know your figures. The second thing is the weather. We know everybody that weather has a big impact on the golf industry and the client demand. But the weather, you can't say just, hey, the weather is nice, so my revenue are increasing, or the weather is bad, so my revenue is decreasing. It's just too simple. So that is why you need to analyze in details the impact of weather on your sale, or even on your revenue. That's what you do. We do that at PriceWing, this kind of graphs behind the scene that are really interesting to know exactly what is the impact on weather. And behind weather, there is temperature, there is sunshine, there is wind, there is many, many parameters. The third data that is key is the booking window. We know that today, with the development of the web, of internet, it's moving. People are booking at a different time than before. They're booking later. So the delay between time of booking, time of reservation, of time of play is really critical to make yield management, to make dynamic pricing. So you have to know the golfer habits to make a yield management policy. So in fact, to have my advice, if you want to go in dynamic pricing and yield management, is base your decision on data, not only on feeling. Feeling pricing is really dangerous. Feeling pricing is to say just, hey, my occupancy rate in 5 days is 10%. Okay, my God, so the weather is quite okay, so I'm going to decrease price. Very dangerous, because in fact, you don't really know what will be your future occupancy rate. So put your decision on data-driven. Now to go in details of dynamic pricing, of yield management, the first step is to forecast the demand. You need to be proactive, not reactive to the weather condition and to the golf demand. You have a puzzle, an everyday puzzle to solve. My occupancy rate is 10%. What will be my occupancy rate? What price I have to set up in 5 days for next Saturday? How to set up this price? If you take into account just the current occupancy rate, so the 10%, you're wrong, because you are reactive, you are not proactive. If you try to forecast what will be my occupancy rate with this kind of price, you are reactive. It's a good approach. So my current occupancy rate is 10%. Will it be 15% in 5 days or 80%? How can I know? And that's what we do. You need to gather data this kind of Saturday, in the last period, in this month, with this kind of weather forecast, with the current occupancy rate, I can say that my prediction for next Saturday will be not 15%, not 80%, but 75%, based on historical data. Like in the airlines or the hotel industry, you have to take into account historical data. Your historical data is really will help you to predict how will be the demand. The second thing that is really, really necessary in the yield management policy is to set up the price thanks to the concept of elasticity. Elasticity, in fact, is quite simple. It is just the golfer reaction to price. If I increase my price by $2 or I decrease my price by $2, what will be the reaction of my golfer on the number of rounds that will be sold? Will it increase? Will it dead? So this is also, you can calculate, and that we do that at pricing, we calculate, historically speaking, what is the elasticity of your clients. And that is really important, not to fill your ground, but to set up the best price to optimize your revenue. Because dynamic pricing is not discount. The objective of dynamic pricing is not to fill your occupancy rate, is to increase your revenue. So sometimes the price will increase, sometimes it will decrease. The objective is what is the best price for the right client to fill your ground. And once you have set up your price thanks to the elasticity, you need to set up your price even more in detail, so hour by hour, slot by slot, because in the morning the price will be different than at midday or in the afternoon. So what you have to do is to do the same process. Once, forecast demand. Second, set price thanks to elasticity. And what is also important to know in dynamic pricing is that you need to adjust your price every day. So maybe not like in the airlines, every minute, you know, we don't understand anything. The price is moving all the time. We are in the golf industry. So I don't think that golfers would like to have the price moving all the time. But maybe twice, 4 times a day, the price can change. So you need to adapt your price all the time. How to do that? Algorithm. Algorithm, it's a big word, you know, like machine learning, like big data, etc. In fact, it's simple. It just gather your data, historical data or predictive data like weather, mix it and say, this is the best price that will optimize your revenue. And that's all. But you have many data to take into account. And you need to be reactive. And you need to be continuously reactive. So that is why you need machine, you need algorithm, you need tools. But one key point is that you need also people. In any industry, you have only tools, only machine. You have people to monitor that. You need to have your intelligence. Golf manager know better than a machine about special event, etc., etc. So it's really a matter to have the technology and the people. Now, operationally, how you can do that? You need to adapt your organization. The organization is key. You can't have just a tool. The first step should be to hire a revenue manager, like in every hotel industry. Each hotel has a revenue manager, even independent hotel. Now it has a cost, and we know, but this cost you have also a return on interest. So you can either hire a revenue manager, and the second solution, my advice should be to nominate a referee in the team of each golf course. Because in every golf course, you are young people that like revenue management, that are interested about that topics, and they can leverage skills. So nominate someone at your desk to take into account this pricing policy. But don't give the pricing strategy to other parties, especially to the bookers. You need really to highlight your skills in terms of dynamic pricing. And the last solution is to have also external consultant, but mostly may be coming from other industry that are that knows about dynamic pricing. And the last thing, but really, really key, is think client. Don't set up a pricing policy without thinking, what will be my golfer reaction? The good news, and it's really a good news, is that golfers are really internet shoppers. They are people like everybody. I hear a lot, very often, that, yeah, golf is different. Each industry says I'm different. But in fact, golf is not different, and golfers are not different. Golfers, they travel, they take train, they take taxi, they take Uber, they bought on Amazon. So they know about dynamic pricing. And it's totally normal for the golf course to have dynamic pricing, to have the prices that are changing all the time. It's normal. When it's raining, it's normal to pay less. When my ground conditions are incredible, it's normal to pay more. The golfer can understand that. So just communicate. Communication is key. You need to communicate to the golfer if you set up a pricing, a yield management strategy. So communicate on your website and communicate also at the desk. Train your desk with few Q&A. So you need to anticipate the golfer reaction. Of course, there will be few people that would say, dynamic pricing, you want my money. But in fact, no. In fact, it's in the interest of the golfers, really. And 95% of golfers will be happy with pricing that are changing, because golfers are different. Remember, some are price sensitive, others are time sensitive. Look, everybody can find what he wants. So in conclusion, it's a short presentation, but at pricing, what we do is we have created a tool, an algorithm that analyzes all the historical data that take into account the weather, and in the hand with the golf manager, we provide dynamic pricing to set up the best price to maximize the revenue. It works in other industry, usually 10 to 15% increase of revenue. It's proven. Dynamic pricing is not new. So we have track record in many industries, and it will be the case, it's already the case in the golf industry. Second, it's not just a matter of technology. And even if I provide a tech tool, I know that people are key. People from the staff, golf managers, and clients. Everybody is key. And last things, if you fear about dynamic pricing, just test and learn. Just test and learn. You can test. If it doesn't work, but it will work, but you can test. So you need to go in dynamic pricing in the future. It's the future, it's not the future of the golf industry, it's the present. So let's go in yield management, which is not at all discount. It's really to increase your revenue. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome PGA past president and president of Hampton Golf, M.G. Orender.
Good morning. We have with us today three panelists who are coming up behind me. I thought I'd lost them. We have from Billy Casper, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing, Emily Clark. From Morton Golf Management, Mike Woods. And Rock Lucas, the owner of Charwood Country Club. We appreciate your being here. We're going to go through a series of questions about something that's very important to all of us, is dealing with dynamic pricing, third-party management, or third-party tee time booking companies, and then we're going to try and leave some time for Q&A at the end. So I'm going to open up with a question for all of you. We'll start with Emily. How do each of you manage your tee time inventory and pricing, and who does it?
Is this working? Oh, it
Yes.
is. Ooh, hello. Thanks. We manage our pricing and inventory at Billy Casper. We combination of centrally in our office, as well as in conversation with the general managers and the team on site. And we manage the pricing in all channels, so online, Res Center, and at the shop. and we control all our rates despite the channel. So we control the rates as well as what day parts, what rate and what day part across all. So ongoing dialogue.
Okay.
Yes, so for Morton Golf at the Hagen Oaks Golf Complex, as well as our other facilities, we're municipal facilities. And for the last 2 years, we've worked with the Dynamic Revenue Services Company and dynamically priced our tee sheets at the municipal golf courses. And so we have a revenue manager within Dynamic Revenue Services that we work with. And we found him to be an expert in this area to help coach us and to have great dialogue back and forth about pricing. And that's how we do it.
Okay. Rock?
We're a little different. We're a single course operator, so we're not the Billy Caspers or the municipals. We're a smaller market. Most everything is going to be done through staff, our golf professional management. In our weekly meetings, we monitor course conditions and the environment, what's going on weather-wise, and work our way around a tee sheet that way. And I wanted to start out and say we do it the old school way. We see what the guy down the street's charging and then, charge $4 less.
I'm going to take that to one more level. What are the most important lessons you've learned in managing your price and yield at your facility, and what would you not do again? Go with.
I think lessons we've learned in managing rate, by doing dynamic or variable rates on your online channels, you can often see what rates people are purchasing. So you understand what the golfer perceives the value to be. And oftentimes, if your price is consistently selling at a variable rate that's less than your posted rate, you start to learn and understand what the true demand is and what people are willing to pay for your course. So you get some consumer feedback that way and understand what the true posted rate should be in that price, and you can adjust from there. So I think it's been one of the biggest advantages of having a team that does the dynamic pricing and understands behavior.
Yeah, so in the municipal environment, I think we were pretty typical in that we would propose green fee rates to, in our case, the city of Sacramento, and we'd be looking for approval. And then we would live with those rates typically for a year, unless we felt real strong that we need to go to bat to change them again. And we were nervous that in the municipal environment that our consumer would be okay with dynamic pricing, and that held us back for a while. And then when we made the leap to go to dynamic pricing, what we found is the sell, so to speak, to the city of Sacramento was so fast, it kind of scared me. And what the city officials said is, well, most of the stuff I buy is dynamically priced. Why wouldn't you do it at the golf course? And we were very nervous about the consumer standing in line paying different rates. Well, we've never had an issue with that in 2 years. And so that really turned the corner for us, that the consumers really, a lot of our consumers are either buying time or they're buying price, and we can talk to them in different ways and charge different rates at different times of the day, and they'll respond to that.
Once again, being a small operator in a smaller market, we've looked into the dynamic pricing, and most of it, you're going to need to be a 20 to 30% online booking, and the dynamic pricing is mostly going to work online or walk-in out-of-town guests, but your day in and day out for us, it just wasn't beneficial. We've also found that dynamic pricing requires a lot of manpower to be constantly monitoring the situation. If you have a small staff, it's probably not for you, which is not for us. But we did try to take the technology and learn from those who are doing it and try to incorporate that into the old school T-sheet way of doing things. And what we would not do again is, be as much concerned as what our competitors are doing down the street. We're going to try to, getting away from that for the most part and doing our own thing. And we would not go back to a third-party provider. We did it forever. We did it for a long time, but we would not go back to it again unless the practices change. And once again, that goes back to if you have manpower to be constantly monitoring what they're doing and correcting it, then it's fine. But if you don't, then I'd probably suggest staying away from it.
Well, I've got 2 follow-ups on dynamic pricing. What have you done if you're doing dynamic pricing? I think, Rock, you probably do it a little less as a standalone operator, but for all of you, how do you inform the public and your consumer how dynamic pricing works? Because dynamic pricing isn't always just time. Sometimes it's advanced booking like airlines do. But how do you educate your clientele as to what you're doing, Emily?
We don't spend a lot of time talking about it being dynamic, and I think the better word for is variable, because it's varying throughout the day. It's responsive to utilization, to past performance, maximizing revenue in that day part. And consumers, I think, much like Mike said, are pretty used to that in retail settings. We do spend time making people aware that our lowest rates are online. So it's probably more of the education. You'll find the best rate available online. And there's a commitment to price parity on our websites for our courses and the third-party channels. So you're never going to find a lower rate at a third party than you would on our own website. And I think that's more of that education piece, that you can find the best rate there, and being committed to that price parity is a lesson we probably all learned in the past few years, and the hotel industry learned 20 years ago.
So Emily, I'm
Lights.
going to go back to you for a second. If your rate is, if you're with a third-party provider and the rate is basically the same, but the difference is there's no booking fee, for example.
Absolutely, it's good for us.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
and
So we spend more time driving people to our website
Right.
versus really spending a lot of time talking about dynamic. We've learned with just making, much like you guys would, making some data-driven decisions around pricing. We've learned that what we've seen is a course has to have a minimum of about 140 rounds a day, and online presence of 25 to 30% before dynamic really makes sense. Otherwise, you'll see, from what we've seen, you'll see some just artificial degradation of the rate because it wants to pull it down to fill up a course that might not ever fill up. Does that make sense?
yes, it does. Mike, how do you guys do it?
Yeah, so real similar to Emily's courses, you know, the words dynamic and stuff is more industry kind of stuff. Our staff at the counter is preaching for your best rates. You know, go to HagenOaks.com, for example, and the consumer really responds to that. And so that's the education process. And then with third parties, our strategy is to price the third parties anywhere between 10 and 15% higher than our rates online. So when we say best prices available at our website, we really mean that. We hold true to that because when they go shop at other places, it's not only higher, but then a lot of times you have booking fees in addition to that.
Right.
I'm going to get to a 30,000 feet. Doing a lot of homework and research, it's kind of reminded me of old school PGA was what's around. Is it a start? Is it 18 holes? Is it 18-hole equivalency? You know, we're taking nines and dividing them by 2, and, you know, what are we doing? So dynamic pricing is kind of the same. Is dynamic pricing truly dynamic pricing where you have no set rates whatsoever, and it is what it is when you call in or you go online and book just like an airline? Or is it a hybrid? And I've seen most everybody's using a hybrid, whereas we're using mostly dynamic pricing online, but not at the golf shop. So I guess I'm seeing dynamic pricing is really starting to get traction, but we really don't have a definition of what is dynamic pricing.
Got it. Well, I'm going to give you one that as an operator I've run into, I'm sure you have, and I want to know how you deal with it, is someone has bought some special online through a third party and paid $15 for a round versus what you feel is your best rate, or if your dynamic pricing model has an advanced ability to buy and save money, like an airline scenario. You got two people show up and you put them in the same foursome. It's not like on an airline, you don't look at the guy next to you and go, what did you pay? And you got two people who've paid distinctly different rates paired up. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, you know, I think that those were the questions I was asking our dynamic revenue services company on the front end. I was really afraid of that. I mean, I have personal relationships with these customers for quite a few decades, and I was really nervous about that. I can't remember that ever happening in 2 years. And I think my response would be, you know, if I chose to offer a special at XYZ, I would want to educate that consumer, hey, take a look at this special. I mean, if we're offering it, you should buy that. And for the future, I would encourage them to do that, but I don't remember that happening.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad it hasn't happened to you. It happened to me once, and never again, by the way. When you are dealing with a third party, I know, Rock, you said you don't anymore, but when you're dealing with a third party provider, there's obviously barter, a flat fee you can pay, or a percentage. How do you go about evaluating what is the best for you in your company or facility? Emily?
So, depending on what the service is, right? I think we are commission modeled and support the channel as a distribution. I think we have to understand that golfers' behavior is their own. If that's where they want to book their times, they're going to. And so fully support the channel as a distribution method, which with fair commissions, and the lower commission, the better. I mean, that's,
Right.
And so we really take a look at what the cash price for something would be versus the cost of those tee times at the APR, at the utilization, and just do a cost analysis of what makes sense. And we've stuck to mostly commission models across the board.
When you do a commission model, do you do it on your entire tee sheet, or is there a limitation as to, and this is for all of you, or is there a limitation to what tee times they can have or not have? What kind of control do you put on that commission model?
We have complete control over price and time of the round, so 100%.
So you do control that.
Yeah, so in our case, we use the barter model, and boy, those are really muddy waters when you use that, and we talk about that every week, and we're always analyzing it, trying to determine if we're using the best method. We dictate the time, and we do analysis every week on what those would have sold for based on our occupancy percentage, what paid rounds are getting driven in by that third party. And that's a tough thing to analyze. And with my team, when we have 4 or 5 of us in the room, we tend to be split on if we should continue to do business with that one third party or not.
Rock?
You can kind of look how this thing trickles down here. You got Emily, and then you got Mike, and then you got Rock. So, and the system works the exact same way. It's the kind of the golden rule. He has the gold rules, and the gold's kind of working down here. So we're down here at copper on our end. So it all depends who you are in what market, and not only the market, but who you are in the market. And if you're at the top of the food chain in your market, then you have a whole lot more negotiating and bargaining power, and you can get something for 1 tee time barter versus it might cost a guy down the road 4 tee times to get the exact same product and services that the 1 tee time person's getting. And it's amazing that it works that way, but that's the real world. And if I was doing it again, I would, they will give you an option. Whoever it is, they'll give you options, but my option on commission and my option on cash is be completely different than these guys' option on commission and cash. So you're almost in a handcuff, no hold barred. You have to do barter if you're going to do it.
But I think it's important. This session's a perfect example of the education of the guidelines and the Bill of Rights and the succinct message that Jay delivered on being educated on what's fair and what everyone's agreed to. They signed on. We've agreed to this. So you have negotiating power. You do. You can have a conversation around it and understand those Bill of Rights and stand up for your inventory. It belongs to you. The relationship doesn't work if they don't have the inventory. Whether you have a lot of courses or one, it doesn't matter. It doesn't exist, right?
If you do choose barter, what is your accounting method or treatment for the value of the rounds that you are putting up for the trade? I guess this is really to you. You're the only one doing barter.
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, we don't, as far as through revenue or through accounting, we call them rounds, but we call them rounds that had a 0 green fee attached to them. And then the analysis after that is really, okay, what would you have sold at that time period? What revenues would you have brought in? And what is that third party selling for you in revenues that we keep? And that's the consistent analysis.
Okay. So how important is it to all 3 of you? I know, Rock, you said you're no longer doing some of this, but what kind of flexibility do you have or would want to have and would tell these people that they should have in the ability to cancel or terminate a contract with a provider that is not living up to, because we all know that there's times someone tells you they're going to do something, you find out later if you have the manpower and the time to watch where your tee times are going in other channels, what is important to you and what do you think is a fair and reasonable time frame to be able to say, I'm done?
Yeah, so in our case, I would only do a month-to-month contract, and we can cancel for any reason, anytime. I wouldn't do it any other way. And then with some of the third parties, they have a lot of affiliates that they work with, and I'm not comfortable with selling tee times on many of those affiliates, so we really restrict where they can sell tee times. But month to month, cancel at any time. They can cancel me at any time. I can cancel them at any time. That's the only way I would do it.
Even though we're not using, we still stay very well versed in the topic and subject, and with other operators around the country. I could see, if you did a year contract, that's fine, but as long as you got out that if they didn't behave properly or they had some poor performance behaviors, then you immediately, but if there's some type of long-term or some specific marketing program that they did for you and they've got money tied up, I can see a little bit, 30-day. And I'm going to go back real quick to Emily's 200 golf courses and my one golf course. Yeah, we have this Bill of Rights, but the Bill of Rights still goes back to what is your negotiating power and bargaining. And if I'm negotiating one golf course in a smaller market versus a Hagen Oaks and a big operator, that's a completely different bargaining tool.
Well, I would say that part of the Bill of Rights and what we're doing today and the NGCOA and the PGA is education. Because even if you're a one club operator, if you know what your rights are and you're educated, I think you can negotiate, certainly, maybe not the same deal someone with 25 or 50, but you can negotiate a fair deal for yourselves. Talk to me about data collection, both obviously third-party providers are supposed to get you data in most cases. There's a process to go through. What do you do to make sure you get your data, not only from third-party providers, but at your own facilities? And then the follow-up question is, how do you use that data?
So we love collecting data, and starting with an email address at the counter, and we have a pretty passionate team around making that a priority. So we have a percentage that we like to reach, and we have a competition around it, and we're constantly showing a leaderboard of data collection, and it's just it drives the whole thing, right? So what we do with it is probably not time for in this, but as personalized as we can get in our invitations or in our offers that we want to do. So the more we know, the better. And it's a high priority at the counter to not only get the person checking in, but golfer 2, 3, and 4. I'm sure this is everyone's best practice, but it's the most valuable thing you can do is get that piece of information and then continue to add attributes to that guest and learn more about them so that you can invite them back in the way that they want to come back and provide an experience that they want to have. So it's a high priority, if not the highest.
Yeah, I echo exactly what Emily said there. We're really into collecting data and getting to know our customers and building relationships. And so we measure every single pro shop cashier and what their percentage is of collecting email addresses. We have a benchmark of a minimum standard. We're always doing sales contests. We're always making it fun. There's been times where we've had small commission models for our cashiers and their ability to collect email addresses. And then, one of the things we learned in our retail world years ago was the power of target marketing. And so, in our Hagen Oaks Super Shop, we got really good at having maybe the new Jamie Saddock line come out, and it's in boxes in our shipping and receiving, and our salespeople were reaching out to their hundreds of Jamie Saddock loyalists and saying, come now, come today, it's going to go fast. And we do the same thing on the green fee side over the last few years. It's really up to the facility and the people to be creative and to figure out how you can segment your lists and your customer, and then how you can talk to them in the language that's really they're going to respond to. And some people think we're good at that. We think we got a long way to go, but that's what we do, and we're really into collecting that info.
if I hear it correct, that's a two-part question. One's in-house, and one's third-party. In-house, hopefully online, everything's automatically collected online on the online bookings and everything. If it's a walk-up, your point of sales are using the pop-ups, showing that these fields are empty and that you need to complete these fields. And if they're in a hurry, you put the forms on the counter for, and you do everything from simple as birthday clubs to drawings, giveaways to, information promotions, those types of things. And we use the point of sale to tell us what percentage of our play we have the data on and whatever data it is that you're looking for. So specifically, if it's email, we're starting to go to text messaging now, and there's a couple of these providers out here that are starting to get in that in a pretty good way because people respond to text instantly. So that's our next thing we're still doing email, but we're really going to start concentrating heavily on text. Third party is a different story. It depends on what I negotiated in my Bill of Rights with the third party. Am I getting it automatically? Am I going to get it once a month? Am I going to have to be strong arming them and, hey, I didn't get my data? Or if I don't have those automatically, then I have to convert it at the point of sale and convert them from being the third party's customer back to being my customer.
So for all of you, Rock, Hagen Oaks, because you're at a facility, Casper, obviously, with your brand of your company and the courses you manage and want to protect. When you're giving someone the right to, as a third party or any marketing company, the right to market that club's name specifically, how do you protect your brand? How and when it can be used? What do you ask for and negotiate for and make sure it's contractual?
Well, I think we touched on a little bit of the affiliates and being aware of where else it might show up. I think that's really important. So I'm not necessarily against the other ones as long as the rate is what we need and what we've discussed and what we've chosen. But the awareness around that, we haven't run into any brand poor behavior. There is, I think, the only place I'll caveat that is fair spend on search terms. So in digital placement, we spend a lot of time making sure we have a chance to represent our clubs in paid search and online advertising with a budget that's reasonable for us and for our courses. When you go up against some of the bigger aggregators, that could get a little imbalanced. So being fair around course search terms, and those are off the table. So it's different. It's a little different, but it's protecting the brand online and having the right to promote your brand in a fair way.
Right.
With paid advertising.
So, and I think what you're alluding to or talking about for the folks sitting here, there are practices that have been used where if I put in a course name with slight variation, I'm directed somewhere else. Is that what you were referencing? Okay.
Yeah, and I would echo what Emily said, and I found as just operating a couple courses, a lot of times I'm talking to an area rep or a regional rep. A lot of times they don't necessarily have an understanding of what their company does as a consumer is searching. That's not necessarily their wheelhouse. So, I have to push up and get to the right people within the third party to have those conversations, and then typically we'd put some language in a contract to deter them from doing exactly what you mentioned.
Again, I think it's a two-part. Am I on board with third parties? Am I, negotiated a contract? Did I give them the rights to use it? Still, you got to have that manpower to manage. Are they using it how we agreed? Then it's a whole other conversation if you're not on the platform, but you're still being used. And I had a conversation with a group, when I asked the third-party provider about that, what you just said. And they said, well, we're not buying your name, we're buying, like golf, or we're buying this, or we're buying this, so we're not really, hijacking your name, but, they are. But I was on the floor, and there's I think it's 1-to-1, is running a free report, and they'll run it for you daily, from what I understand. I got to look into it more. But they'll run a report daily, every morning, and scan the internet and everything for whatever, if your name has been used in any way, shape, or form, and then if it has against your policies, then they'll screenshot it and send it to you. Now it's up to you to whatever you're going to do with it. And that's where the problem is. What do you do with it after you find out? There's not a whole lot unless you're going to, arm up a lot of attorneys and lawyers.
So that we don't position this that third-party dealings are a bad thing, because they're not in all cases if you're educated, to your point earlier. I'd like you to highlight some success stories with sharing access through a third-party tee time provider, doing business with them, and why is it important for operators to be able to share or restrict access to them even if they're in business with them. But let's start with the first part, some success stories of dealing with third-party tee time providers.
I think the overall success is just the additional eyeballs, right? I mean, we want people to be able to play golf at our golf course, and if that's where they're searching and that's where they want to transact, then we need to be willing to meet golfers where they want to transact, when they want to play our course, at the rate they want to play. All of that personalization, it exists in the way that they book golf too, right? So I'm fully supportive of the distribution channels, again, with fair commissions and good behavior, but I don't have a specific success story to speak to other than pure acquisition of eyeballs that go beyond any course's database and volume.
Yeah, I would echo that. We want to get eyeballs on our facilities, and that is one of the places the consumer likes to go. And to a large extent, we feel like we're doing our job if a third party maybe drives in the consumer to play a round of golf, and then our role is to develop a relationship with them, to collect data, to make sure to show them a great time. And we're hoping they enjoy their experience, to follow up with them afterwards, to ask them to join our group, our club, our loyalty program. And some of the third parties are really effective at sending us new customers at times. And then also some of the third parties over the years, you create some pretty major databases of email databases. So we might have a special or a promotion or something we're doing where it's pretty easy to reach out to those groups of our customers through this other avenue. And we found that to be successful at times.
I'm going to back up and digress a minute and make sure I understand and go on the record. I am not against any third-party provider.
No.
I know. All I'm saying is that it's a really, really good tool. And if you're in the right market, the right facilities, and you have the right staff, it's amazing. The tools and resources they have available are unbelievable. But but the problem is if you get the wrong operators and they do the old show 'em age, the old Ronco TV commercial, set it and forget it.
Yep.
Then you get into a lot of trouble. And so it's a really powerful tool. And when we first started using it, we had a little extra staff that was kind of, pre-crash, and everything was great. But the data we were collecting, the rounds it was great. But but you've got to be at the right place, right time, right people, right staff, right market, right facility.
I'm going to turn it over for some Q&A. We got about 10 minutes left. And depending on how many questions, I may ask each of you for a closing remark if you want to think about something you would say to advise for the good of the industry, the business. So, do we have any questions, right? Hold on, I'm sorry, they got a microphone coming to you, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Do you track ancillary revenues such as food and beverage, driving range time, merchandise with the third-party customers?
Yes, we can.
Excuse me, and do those decisions affect like your barter times and whether you're going to do it or not?
So I can't say we've done a lifetime value analysis on a guest segmented by which channel they came in on. I think we're capable of it. It doesn't, to my knowledge, has not been a part of any of our negotiations. I'm very aware of what our spend is in each of those verticals per guest, but what channel they came from as the segment hasn't driven our decisions so far.
Oh, did you want to say something first?
Okay, so same answer. We're as far as measuring it by channel, I haven't done that before. Not quite that sophisticated, but I'm going to give you my feel because I'm pretty solid on my feel on this one. So the third-party consumer that comes in with a paid round is pretty similar to any other guests that we have. The barter, sometimes trade time type of consumer that comes in tends to spend at a far lower level at our facility.
I'll echo exactly what Mike said. If it's you can go one level further. If it's a out-of-town traveling destination type, they'll spend more. If it's a local in town, they're going to spend the same as your regular. If it's a trade time, you're going to probably hardly see any additional spend.
And then the second part was, do you track your third party when you convert them over to your own system just to see how you've brought in customers and now you've converted?
Yes.
Yeah, in our case, no.
I didn't hear exactly.
Yeah, it's-
Something about conversion.
It's been about 50-50 of people will come over to the website as a channel or they stay with third party. I think it's preference.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Any closing, just a closing comment? We'll go all the way down to Rock. We'll let him start first this time.
I kind of did my closing when I did my statement about where I stood, but as far as, I'm just going to say general golf. I think I think golf is bottomed out. I think we're on the uptick. I think we keep doing the basic fundamentals and we keep taking care of a customer. I don't think that I had several meetings with some powers to be, and I don't think that yeah, you've got to quit golf, and we need to do some of those things for that market. But I think we need to do a better job of marketing the game in golf. And I love my USGA buddies, and I just spent last week with them on some really good things. But I don't think, while we're young, I think we need to do the opposite. We need to, people are spending time at baseball games and football games, and they're spending entire days and 5 hours at events, that things they're enjoying doing. We need to promote that part of the game, that aspect that, hey, I'm not talking about the 5 and 6 hour rounds. I'm talking about your 3.5 to 4.5 hours. But promote that, and it's fun, enjoyable with your friends and family, and we need to do a better job of doing that part of the game.
Well said. On this topic, it's my role to create those relationships with third parties, and I do the best I can. And what I've found over the years is that negotiate. It's all negotiable. And if you think it's not, I get surprised over and over again. Where I really put my focus on this topic, though, is with my team right at the counter and how well we're doing in building relationships, collecting data, marketing to our guests, and the experience that we provide to our guests. And I really find that I get a much better return when I focus on that end of our business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with either of you more. I think if we can move away from looking at price as the driver and the only reason people decide on their experience, and move into focusing on the experience, what they get there, creating a fun reason for them to come back, and just living in this space together with third parties. It's a really symbiotic relationship. They don't have a distribution channel without our inventory. Mine, yours. If you have 1, 10, doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. So behaving well together and coming to something like this and understanding your rights. It's a pretty small group. I wish there was more people here, because I think it's up to all of us to spread this word and to understand that they've signed on. So we're in this together, but creating fun reasons, giving them an experience, and just moving away from $1 or $2 here and there as the reason someone would come back to your facility. Right? Give them something bigger than that.
Well, first of all, I thank the panelists. They're from very different types of facilities and walks in the business. I want to close, though, with a couple quick remarks. First of all, it's incumbent on us in the business to talk about golf's, I even hate to use the word rebound, but we are rising. We are rising again. I think it's very important to put that message out there. I've seen 5 or 6 straight quarters of year-over-year, quarter-over-quarter financial growth. So I'm seeing some good things. Is it where we want it? No. Second is the operators have to be educated. It's incumbent on all of you, because if you can educate the other operators around you and help them be better, it makes absolutely better for everyone. And last but not least, to Rock's point, I'm 63, I've got a pair of 20-year-olds, and I will tell you that when they were little and I was at their basketball games and their soccer games, I was looking around the courts and the fields at guys my age wearing Titleist or Callaway hats who would much rather be at the golf course. So you need to find ways to make it interesting. We have little links. The PGA has several programs. Create your own program. Give parents a reason to bring their kids to your golf course on the weekend instead of the soccer fields and the baseball fields, and you will see a wonderful growth in our industry. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thanks.